Well, good morning. Welcome to Debbie's Back Porch. So glad to have you with us. I made English muffins the other day, and a viewer suggested I make crumpets. And so I made crumpets, and I made some nice strawberry topping and some whipped creme fraiche. Here are the ingredients. You can pause to write them down. And hey, while you're paused, you know the drill. A thumbs up and a subscribe make me very happy, and if you click the little bell icon, you get a notice when I post new videos about twice a week. Now let's get cooking. This recipe calls for a cup of creme fraiche. That's 1 cup heavy whipping cream, 2 tablespoons of cultured buttermilk. Most buttermilk you buy in the grocery store is cultured, but check to make sure. Sometimes it isn't. I've showed you this before. This is, if you're not familiar with creme fraiche, it's a lot like sour cream. Only in my opinion, much better. You can make your own. I just shake this up, set it aside somewhere between 8 and 24 hours, and I always allow 24 hours. It will turn into creme fraiche or sour cream. You can use it anywhere you use sour cream. And 24 hours later, I actually stuck it in the fridge for a couple hours. I'll show you what we've got with that creme fraiche. And really, that's all I did to it, nothing else. I'm going to whip it later for the topping, and it makes a whipped topping that's, well, it's a little tangy, tangier than just plain whipped cream. In this recipe, you could just whip up some heavy cream if that's what you prefer, but try this once because it has such a great, deep, tangy flavor. Now to the crumpet ingredients. This is 418 grams of all-purpose flour, which is about 3.5 cups. This is 1 cup of pretty warm water, and I'm going to put a 1/2 cup of whey into it, and if you don't have whey, use just 1.5 cups of warm water. Not hot, but just good and warm. And then I have over here a cup of warm milk. This was 45 seconds in the microwave. This is a teaspoonful of baking powder and 1.25 teaspoons of salt. I have here 3 tablespoons full of melted butter. And this is a tablespoonful of yeast. And I have here just a teaspoonful of sugar. You could use Splenda. The yeast doesn't really need the sugar. That's just kind of something people tell you. It makes it faster, but it is not necessary. So there are no special directions here. We're just going to dump everything in the bowl and mix it up. I do usually add the salt last, or I mix it in with the flour. I'm just going to put it in last here, just because in my mind you don't want too much salt with your yeast until it is all mixed up, but it really doesn't matter. You can just dump it all in here, and I'll start with the water whey and the milk. I'll add all the ingredients except the salt and baking powder, and just I'll mix with this spatula to start with, and then I'm going to get my little hand mixer. This is not a really thick batter. You could just mix it all with your hands, but my constant companion is over here to the right, holding on to the mixer. She's all ready to go, so I'm going to use my little hand mixer on this, and let me get all of that butter out. You know, this is very much like a pancake mix. You know, I make German pancakes. They're called Dutch babies. These are English pancakes. They're sort of a dessert pancake, and they're called crumpets. But they're different than other pancakes in that these have yeast, and we're going to let them rise for a good long period, so they have a little bit different flavor and a much different texture. I'm going to get this started, then I'm going to let Athena do it a little bit. And if you don't know, Athena is my 4-year-old constant companion. That was the salt and the baking powder. And I let her mix this off the camera. We're just going to get it nice and creamy. And I'll show you what we have here. This is a lot of batter, by the way. This will make between 2 and 3 dozen, according to how thick you make them. And you just let them cool, and you put them in a bag, and you put them in the freezer. And then when you want to have some later, you just toast them in the oven or drop them down in your electric toaster. Going to cover them, let them sit in just at room temperature for about 2 hours, or you can put them in the fridge and let them rise overnight and use them in the morning. Now to the strawberries, I put just a little water, just a little to keep them from sticking, in the bottom of this enameled cast iron. And I've separated my strawberries into 2 batches. One batch is little pieces that I'm going to mash, and the other is slices that I want to stay whole, and I'll put the slices in later so they don't cook quite as long. So I'm just going to turn this on a medium heat, let them start sweating, and then I'll just kind of mash them. I want to crush these some to get the juice out. Now I'm going to do these with Splenda, and I'll tell you how to do them with sugar instead as we go along. And you can do this with other fruit. You could do it with peaches if you like, or apricots or raspberry. But I've got that sizzling a little bit, and I'm going to put 2 tablespoonsful of Splenda in there. And you can put 2 tablespoonsful of sugar if you prefer. Now the difference is that the sugar will thicken the fruit and make a little glaze. Splenda won't do that, so you have to add something to it to thicken it a little. And I'm going to use cornstarch in the ingredients you saw, some cornstarch and some water, and I'm going to make a slurry with that and thicken these strawberries with it. And I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit because I don't want it to splatter. So I'm just going to pour about half of this in here now. And if I need more, I'll pour the rest of it in later. But I think this will be enough. And just stir that around, turn the heat down to kind of low. We're going to let those simmer and thicken and soften. I've still got the rest of the strawberries, about half a pack, that I'm going to put down in here, and they'll stay more firm. And when I get these in, again, I'm going to turn the heat down, and I'm just going to let them sit and simmer here a while, and then I'll turn them off so they'll be cool for my crumpets. I do want to add this little bit of vanilla, just a 1/4 teaspoonful. A little bit of lemon juice is something some folks add. To me, this is sweet enough and tart enough. So I just like to add a little bit of vanilla. If you're using peaches, you might add just a touch of cardamom. And for crumpets, any kind of sweet topping that you want to use would work. You know what would be wonderful is lemon curd. I have a video on that. I'll link it. You can use a variety of forms to make crumpets. Those will make really thin. This is an egg ring. This is a cookie cutter. The little silicone ones are easier to use. They don't stick, and they've got little handles. But they make really thin crumpets, so it's according to how thick you want it. You can even use a tuna can and cut out both sides. The ones I'm making today are going to be thin, but you can make them as thick as you want. You just have to cook them longer. Here you go. Look at this puffy stuff. It's been 2 hours. I'm just going to stir it down a little bit, and just full disclosure, I forgot to add the sugar. It's over here. I'm going to put it in and mix it up now. Sugar or Splenda, either one, but you see it rose just fine without any sugar. So I'm going to get 2 pans going. This is my filled skillet. It'll hold 3, and over there in the back I have a breakfast griddle, and I'll get it and butter it and start a second batch. So I'm just brushing on some butter. You don't want much at all. And you want this heat to be medium-low, nowhere near as warm as you would use for a pancake, an American-style pancake. And I'm going to brush the butter inside the rings too. Now I'm only going to use a 1/4 cup measure to fill these, so these will be kind of thin. You can make them a good bit thicker. You'll just cook them longer. These I'm going to cook about 10 minutes on one side. So here we go. I'm going to test one right there. And you see it's not really sizzling. If it sizzled, I would turn the heat down. We want to cook these slowly without burning them on the bottom. So in we go with the batter. As I say, this is just about a 1/4 cup. And I'll spread it around just to make sure it fills the bottom. And you can see from that form that that's about as thick as that form can handle. And I'm trying to make them fairly consistent in size, so I'm only putting the same amount in these bigger forms. And just a note, we're going to make about half of this batter. I'm going to put the rest in the refrigerator and have them for breakfast too. As I said, any leftovers can be cooled and put in a bag in the freezer. And they do quite well just in the toaster. Heat it up enough to melt your butter. Ooh, they're so good. Now I'm going to set my timer for 10 minutes and I'm going to leave them alone for 10 minutes. And that's one reason here. Let me get this out and I'll show you. See the back of this, well, it didn't show you much. The back of this is just barely browning. We don't want these really highly browned. These are tender. We don't want any crunch. So this is after about 5 minutes and I just want you to see it's still fairly liquid on the top but has a lot of bubbles. But at 10 minutes, it's dry on top, almost rubbery. And that's when you want to turn them. Now, truth is, you don't have to turn them at all. If you plan on saving them and toasting them later, just take them out as they are. But I like to have a little bit of toast on the other side, just a little golden. And it's pretty hot, but it just comes right off. That form comes right off. The other ones don't. So I'm going to just flip it. The other ones, and they're really, really hot. I'm going to pick it up on my spatula here and then just run a knife around the edges. I'm going to figure out some way to pick this up without burning myself. There you go. And I'm just going to run a knife around the edges to loosen it. It doesn't take much. And then I'll flip it in. And the other ones in the back are running about 5 minutes behind this bunch. Let me move this over here and let me show you how I do it. Just want to loosen it a little bit. I actually need an oven glove to do this and I don't have a clean one. So I'm just going to do it carefully. See, it comes right out. And then I'll put it over and just slightly brown the other side. And this one I'm going to have to take out too. And you can see my strawberries back there cooling. But that's good and done. Not liquid at all. If you make these thicker in these larger forms, about 15 minutes is what it will take. If you filled that form up, it would take about 15 minutes to get them to this stage. So I'm going to flip these, take them off, and then I'm going to go make my creme fraiche. I'll be right back. Okay, we're going to whip our creme fraiche, and I'm going to use a little Splenda in it to sweeten it. And as always, if you're using Splenda, you have to change it a little bit to make it act like sugar. So I'm going to add a 1/4 teaspoonful of cornstarch. You don't have to add that cornstarch if you're on really low carb. Don't add it. But then you have to use the product really quickly, because if all you're using is Splenda, it will separate more so than if you're using sugar. So I'm going to add my 1/4 teaspoonful of the cornstarch, and then I'm going to whip it. I'm using my immersion blender. It has this little attachment that works really well. I use it a lot, but you can use your mixer. It just takes a little bit longer, or you could just do it with a whisk. And you could just make plain whipped cream. I'm just blending this a little bit. Don't want to over blend it, by the way, just till it makes really soft peaks. But you could just use whipping cream and make regular whipped cream. The trick with the cornstarch and the Splenda is necessary for that too. It will just keep it from separating so quickly. So we're just going to blend this up until we get soft peaks. And using the creme fraiche really adds, see, there's my soft peaks, really adds a flavor that you don't get from just using regular whipped cream. You might not like it. We love it. And you should try it once. It's just so tasty. So here's my crumpet with some of the strawberry topping. You see those nice big slices that I left. And I'm going to top it with this whipped creme fraiche. And then I'm going to take a bite. And I only have one. And one is not enough. But I'll start with one. This is good for breakfast. This is good for dessert. It's good for brunch. You want to slather on some butter when you take it out. I did, and sorry I didn't show you. You can use any kind of fruit topping. You could use maple syrup, just as long as you use some butter. Look at that. This is just a great dessert or breakfast for dinner. It's so yummy. And that creme fraiche adds just a slight tartness that wakes everything up. I hope you try this, and I hope you like it. And yes, I hope to see you again tomorrow.